Do you know that every WordPress website comes with a theme and a set of plugins? And every theme and plugin will have its set of codes loaded on the page or pages to make the functions work. So the more codes loaded to a page, the slower the website will be. It is inevitable. Also, all websites will be hosted on a web host so that all the codes of the website can be delivered to the users in an understandable way. If your web host is slow, the delivery will be impacted. And whenever there is a connection to external sources such as Google Fonts, Google Maps, display ads, reCAPTCHA, it is inevitable that your website will be served much slower. Because on top of waiting for your web host to load all the page elements, we need to wait for the external sources to pass the information to be displayed on your page. Now let's say that my website has a couple of pages. The theme will add some codes mainly to the header and footer of the pages. The plugins will add some codes to some or all of the pages. If there is a code added to a page to display Google Maps, it has to wait for Google Maps to respond to the data before the maps will be displayed, making this page load slower. The question is, should you optimize just the home page or should you optimize all the pages of your site? This is a very common question, and the answer is you should optimize all your pages for speed, especially those pages that are ranking for certain keywords that matter to your website or business. So the things that could slow down your website are mainly the theme, the plugins, and the web host, but that's not all. I'm going to share with you 9 practical tips to speed up your WordPress website so that you can increase your site visitors retention rate, which may lead to a higher ranking on search results. You definitely want to stick with me to the end because I promise you, some of the tips you have not heard of them before because they are thought of and experimented by yours truly. So let's go. Hey, it's Jack here from Rank Math, the WordPress SEO plugin that gives your business the best chance of beating your competitors on search engines. We put out a lot of videos to help you grow your search traffic, so consider subscribing to our channel to get SEO and business knowledge delivered straight to your YouTube notification. Now, I have something unique to share with you today because I've optimized many WordPress websites and have found some commonalities as to the main causes of site speed, which you'll be learning in this video. We'll first deal with internal issues such as themes, plugins, and page elements, and then we'll work on external issues such as page caching, web hosting, content delivery network, or CDN. And nothing is better than walking you through the issues with an example. We will be running this website through the Google Pagespeed Insights test to know the current state of it. Because without the basis of optimization, we wouldn't know what to optimize. And as you can see, it doesn't seem like there are any elements that could cause the web page to slow down. Now, there are many speed testing tools out there, but because we are trying to optimize our page speed to take advantage of Google's algorithm update called Page Experience Update, and it has given us such a comprehensive tool to analyze our site, I would say the best speed optimization tool is Google Pagespeed Insights. So let's copy the URL of the homepage and paste it over to Google Pagespeed Insights. If you don't know how to reach this page, we have left a link in the description. Well, what do we know? The mobile score on this page is poor with these metrics, and the desktop score is average. Since Google is putting a lot of focus on mobile speed and the desktop metric will naturally improve as we optimize for mobile speed, we will only focus on the mobile score and metrics. Now, all these metrics influence the performance score, and this is the scoring weightage. As you can see, the current version of Pagespeed Insights focuses a lot on the largest Contentful paint, the total blocking time, and the cumulative layout shift. If you haven't heard of the term Core Web Vitals, it is part of the page experience update I've mentioned earlier, which simply means the speed performance of your website has an influence over its ranking. So the largest Contentful pane is part of the Core Web Vitals. The same goes for the cumulative layout shift. And the total blocking time has an influence over the first input delay, which is the measure of the responsiveness of your web page based on the user's interactivity. Now that we know what the Core Web Vitals are and its correlation to the metrics from Google Pagespeed Insights, let's understand what each of these metrics are. If you just click on this expand view, you will see a short description for each of the metric. And if you want to understand more about it, you can click on learn more, and there will be an in-depth write-up on the metric. But let me speed up your learning process. The first Contentful paint measures how fast the first object of your website is displayed on the browser. In this case, it takes 3.7 seconds, which is really slow. I'm pretty sure if you visit a website and your browser is showing a blank page for more than 3 seconds, you will exit the page, right? So to get a good score for this, your first object needs to display below 1.8 seconds. Between 1.8 to 3 seconds, you will have the orange indicator, and over 3 seconds, you will have the red indicator, which means slow, as we can see over here. The first Contentful paint is influenced by these audits, as you can see here. These are the audits to optimize, and these are the past audits, and together they influence the first Contentful paint. The speed index is the time it takes for all the objects at the top of the page that displays on the screen. In other words, objects above the fold are displayed. In our case, it takes 12.1 seconds, which is incredibly slow. And to get a good score, the speed index should be 3.4 seconds or less. Between 3.4 to 5.8 seconds, you get the orange indicator, and above 5.8 seconds, you will see the red indicator as we have seen here. The largest Contentful paint is the time it takes for the largest element above the fold to load. And in our example, these are all the above the fold elements, and the largest element is the image of the lady, and it takes 12 seconds to load. For a good score, we are aiming for 2.5 seconds or less. Between 2.5 to 4 seconds, you will see an orange indicator, and over 4 seconds to load the largest element is considered slow. The audits that influence the largest Contentful paint are these opportunities as well as the past audits. And remember, the largest Contentful paint is one of the metrics for core web vitals, so this is really important. Now the time to interactive is the time where the user can do something on the site, like scrolling or clicking off a button. And in our example, it takes 13.3 seconds for the user to scroll the page. My question is, will you engage this business if it takes 13.3 seconds for you to scroll the page? I highly doubt so. So to get a good score for this metric, the interactivity needs to be between 0 to 3.8 seconds. Between 3.9 seconds to 7.3 seconds, it is considered as moderate, and anything above 7.3 seconds is considered slow. Now as for the total blocking time, as it states here, it is the sum of all time periods between the first Contentful paint and the time to interactive when a task length exceeds 50 milliseconds. Which means between the time when your page is loading, there is this task, for example, to load a Google map that exceeds 50 milliseconds, maybe it is 400 milliseconds, and there is another task maybe to load the reCAPTCHA that takes 150 milliseconds. In total, these tasks that took longer than 50 milliseconds will be added up. That's the idea of the total blocking time, and it has an influence on the performance of the first input delay, which is part of the core web vitals. To get a good score on this metric, the total blocking time must not be more than 200 milliseconds. Between 200 to 600 milliseconds is moderate, and in our case, because it is above 600 milliseconds, it is considered as slow. Finally, we have the cumulative layout shift, which is a core web vital. And the best way to explain what this is, in this example, this user decides to go back to the previous page, but because the page element shift, the user clicks on the Place My Order button instead, where he or she has bought 56 items unintentionally. This usually happens when there is either an image or video with unknown dimensions on the page, a font that renders larger or smaller than its fallback, which means if you use, for example, Google Fonts, it takes time for your website to connect with Google Fonts before the style of the font is loaded on your page. So during this period of connection, you have a fallback font to display. If your fallback font is, for example, 20 pixels, while your Google Fonts, when it replaces the fallback font, is 40 pixels, it is going to push all the content below downwards. And another cause of the CLS issue is if there is a third-party ad or widget that dynamically resizes itself. If you have this issue, then you may want to limit the size of the ad placeholder. Luckily, we do not have an issue with the CLS on this page. Now that we understand what the 6 metrics are and this correlation to core web vitals, let me share with you all the tips to speed up your WordPress website. This is my unique take on speed performance. If your blank page is not fetching a 90 plus score on Google Pagespeed Insights, then whatever pages you are trying to optimize for speed will not get any better than the performance of the blank page. It makes sense, right? So when you identify issues that are slowing down your blank page and you optimize them, naturally all the other pages will have a better performance. On our WordPress dashboard, let me add a new page. Let me name this as blank page. And let's publish it. As you can see, this is the blank page. Let me copy the URL and paste it over to Google Pagespeed Insights. And what do we have here? We have such a poor score on the blank page, so what can we expect from the other pages? All these metrics other than the CLS are in red. And if we look at the optimization opportunities, we can see that the embedded YouTube video at the footer adds to the unused JavaScript, the unused CSS. It causes a huge impact on the loading of the third-party assets. Remember, we talked about how loading stuff from external sources will slow down the site. All these are from the YouTube video. These as well. And it adds to the JavaScript execution time. So it is definite that the YouTube video is the main culprit of a slow blank page. Generally, we do not want third-party codes like the ones you see over here, especially those that add to the main thread blocking time. We do not want them to be loaded on a blank page. Here comes the question. Do we really need a general YouTube video at the footer of the page? Or if you have a Google map on the footer, or maybe a weather forecast widget, do we really need them on the footer? Because it will appear on every page of your website and it will slow down all the other pages. If the answer is no, I'll go to where the element is and remove it. Now let's add a text to the blank page. Say it is test 1. And test it again. The reason why we do this is because we want to know if Google is testing the correct page. Sometimes it is testing a cache page which does not reflect the change. And since we see this text we've added, Pagespeed Insights is testing the right page. So we can see that the issues related to YouTube are gone. The score becomes much better. So if you can, optimize the blank page and have it score more than 90 on Google Pagespeed Insights, and you will see the performance of all your other pages improving naturally. You can also add a caching plugin to optimize the page, which I will talk about later on. I'll give you all the resources you need in this video to get your blank page to score above 90. Honestly, this tip is subjective but often overlooked. So how do we identify slow loading plugins? I recommend doing the following test on a separate website or on a staging environment. I'll utilize this tool called Pingdom because the results are more stable. I've left the link to this page in the description if you're interested to check it out. What we want to do is to deactivate all the plugins from your site and test the blank page on Pingdom. This is to have a baseline for comparison. Once we have the results for the blank page without any plugins, we want to activate one plugin at a time. Let's say the contact form 7. And we open up Pingdom on a new tab and test the same page again. Now compare the results of the two tests and you will see that contact form 7 adds more requests, more load time, and about 15 kilobytes to the page size without us adding any elements to the page. This means that the Contact Form 7 plugin is adding more codes to the page even before you add any functionality. If we test Rank Math for example, let us deactivate the Contact Form 7 and activate both the free and pro version of Rank Math. And we test it on Pingdom again. Rank Math adds about 0.7 kilobytes to the page size. It does not add any additional requests to the page, and the load time is almost similar. So if you are looking for the fastest WordPress SEO plugin, then you definitely want to check out Rank Math because we use the least lines of code, our plugin folder size is the smallest, we are the smallest in terms of the memory usage, and we are the fastest in terms of page speed. We add a status bar to your post whenever you are logged in so that you can easily check the page speed on the post you are on. You can hide the status bar if you want to, and you can remove it completely from other posts as well if you decide to. You have total control. Plus, all our modules can be switched on or off depending on your use case. If you don't need the redirections module, you can turn it off so that the unused feature will not load any codes to your website. it makes your site even sleeker. Also, you can reduce the amount of plugins you install on your site. For example, you don't need an additional plugin for 404 monitor, you don't need an additional plugin for redirections, schema, sitemap, etc. Most of what you need in terms of SEO are available in this small little plugin folder. The key is, we do not want to install plugins that are of single use unless necessary, and we do not want to install plugins that add to the page size without us adding anything to it. So run through your existing plugins and see if you can identify plugins that are slowing down your site, and you want to see if there is any way that you can replace them without causing any functionality issues. Tip 3 is probably the easiest yet the most effective way to improve your page speed and core web vitals. Let me show you something awesome. If we visit the previous page speed test on our homepage and we scroll to the bottom where we see the audit called largest contentful paint element, if we expand it, we will see the largest element above the fold is the lady doing yoga. Point of reference: images are larger in size than text or buttons. So there are two ways to optimize for the largest contentful paint in my example. We can either optimize the image to make it load faster, or we can change the largest element above the fold to another element. Let me show you what I mean. The current mobile version of our page shows the image first, then the text and buttons. This number 1 column represents the image, and the content over here is within column number 2. Let's switch this around. As we refresh the page, now we can see that the text and buttons are at the top and the image is at the bottom. I've pushed the image down so that it would not be entirely visible above the fold. And if we test this page again, you can see that the largest contentful paint went from this to this, and the score has improved over 15 points. The reason this is still in the orange zone is because of other issues which we will be tackling in a while. So a simple tweak to change the largest contentful element to something that is lighter in weight can give you a significant improvement in terms of speed and core web vitals. Of course, this tweak needs to make sense to your business. In my case, the text and button makes more sense to be above the fold than the image. Images are part and parcel of a website. Without images, the web pages will just be text, and it is boring. A picture is worth 1,000 words. Have you heard of the idiom? So images are important, yet they are one of the main causes for site speed. You see, a standard desktop screen dimension is 1920 by 1080p, and on a mobile, let's say that it is iPhone 13 Pro Max, it has a screen dimension of about 295 by 608 pixels. So imagine you upload an image that is 3000 by 3000 pixels onto your website. There will be two issues. Number 1, the size of your image will be towards the extreme. The recommended size for a web image is below 200 KB, so it will take a long time for your server to load the image onto the browser. The second issue is, more time is required for your server to resize the image down to the dimension of the devices. Hence, optimizing your images for the web is super important in terms of site speed. Our recommendation is, if there is a need for a full-length image that looks good on both desktop and mobile, then make the width of the image to 800 pixels. And for the half-width images for the purpose of having text and image side by side, we recommend to size it to 300 pixels in width. If you resize the image based on our recommendation, your image size should be less than 400 KB. And then, to optimize your image further to keep the size below 200 kilobytes, the popular image optimization plugins are Imagify and ShortPixel, where you will optimize your images automatically when uploaded. But my personal preference and practice is to manually optimize an image through a free tool called Kraken.io. Click on Try Free Web Interface. I like to use the lossy compression. Let's drag this image with a file size of 336 kilobytes to Kraken, and you will see the file size reduced drastically. I will download this image before uploading it to the website. That's my personal practice. And finally, to optimize your image further is to serve your images in WebP format, which is the gold standard for image formats that is developed by Google. Again, plugins like Imagify and ShortPixel have this function, but let me share with you a quick tip. If your website is hosted on an Apache or Nginx server, plugins like Imagify and ShortPixel works best with it. And you may also want to couple your image optimization plugin with caching plugins like WP Rocket or these other plugins to improve site speed. However, if your website is hosted on a Litespeed server, like in our example, I will install a plugin called LS Cache because it includes all the image optimization tools I've mentioned earlier, as well as it provides whatever functions that WP Rocket provides, and it is free. So another quick tip here is to have your website hosted on a Litespeed server if possible, because not only it performs 12 times faster than Nginx, you can reduce the number of plugins usage by 1. Now back to our example, for the sake of everybody, let's install the ShortPixel Image Optimizer plugin. If you are new to ShortPixel, you can request a key and it will be sent to this email that you have provided. You want to copy the API key in the email and paste it here for validation. Once done, go to Advanced, and under the next generation images, you want to check this box and this box for the delivery of WebP images. Just note that ShortPixel runs on a credit system. The free plan allows you to optimize 100 images per month. You can go to their pricing page to find out more by clicking on the Upgrade Now link. And since we are credit strapped, let's only optimize the images on the home page. Once done, let's test this page again. So this is the before and this is the after. It performs a little bit better than before, and the issue with served images in next-gen formats becomes a pass audit on the new test. As you can see on our example, we have a very nice home page, and we know that any page elements that require a connection to third-party sources will slow down the web page, such as the Google map. The question is, do we really need a map on the home page? Homepage is usually the first page that search engines crawl, so you definitely want to make sure that it is loading fast. So will it be better if the map is added to the contact page? Then the next question is, wouldn't that contact page load slower? What's the difference, right? Let me share this with you. What are the possible keywords your contact page will rank for? I presume it will be your brand name plus contact, support, or whatever. The key is, it will be ranking for branded keywords which have little to no competition. So no matter how slow the page is, it will still be ranked at the top on those branded keywords. Of course, don't make it too slow that your customers will leave without contacting you. So my point is, any page on your website, whenever it is ranking for competitive keywords, you want those pages to load as quickly as possible. So you don't want to add too many elements that will slow down those pages. You want to allocate those resources properly. Another example is reCAPTCHA. Do you need the functionality on all your web pages? The answer is no, right? You only need it on, for example, login pages or lead capture pages to deter spams or brute force attacks. Please note that these are the page elements that may slow down your web page. Just try removing them from your pages and see how your page performs. I'm pretty sure they are elements that will slow down your page. Once you optimize your page without these elements, your page naturally improves on the first input delay, which is a core web vital. As you know, WordPress themes add codes to all your web pages. They inject codes on the header, the footer, and the sidebar, and even on the content areas. So having a lightweight theme is crucial when it comes to speeding up your website. But the tricky part is, there are tons of WordPress themes on the market and it's hard to choose which is the most suitable theme for you. I'm not worried about free themes because they gotta pass a certain standard before WordPress lists them in their repository. So we can be sure that most of the free themes are lightweight, but the downside is they are often lacking in terms of customization. Paid themes, on the other hand, do not need to pass any standards, so theme developers can inject as many features into the theme to make it more compelling, but oftentimes they are bloated with lots of unnecessary codes. So believe me when I said I have come a long way to find this list of highly customizable WordPress themes that are lightweight and will not slow down your website. And of course, I believe there are other lightweight themes on the market. If you know of any that are not mentioned in the list earlier, can you let me know? Leave them in the comment section. If you are new to speed optimization and you have not heard of the term caching, it is simply a separate version of your website temporarily stored on your server so that it can be served much faster. It is just like pre-made food can be served much faster because you won't need to prepare the food from scratch. The same goes for your website. When someone types in your web address on a browser, the request is sent to the server. If there is no caching, the server would need to load the elements of your website one at a time before it can be served. Imagine having hundreds or thousands of requests every minute. The server has to load your website hundreds or thousands of times. Whereas if the server has a stored version, it can serve the website to visitors immediately. A caching plugin helps you create that version of your website. There are many caching plugins as I've mentioned earlier, but in this example, I will use WP Rocket for the sake of everyone whose websites are not hosted on a Litespeed server. Once we have installed the WP Rocket plugin, the next question is, what is the best setting? Honestly, there is none, because every website functions differently. What works on my site may not work on yours. Let's start with the cache settings. By default, these are the best settings already. Unless you have a specific mobile theme or version of your website, then you want to check this. But for most modern WordPress themes, you don't need to check this. For file optimization settings, the best setting for your site is to test each setting one by one. If you check this setting, you will see this message where it says, this could break things. You want to be wary of it. If you activate this setting and you save changes, you want to immediately clear cache and visit your web pages to see if anything breaks. If nothing breaks like this example, we can keep this setting on. Do the same for all the settings. Whatever setting that breaks your site, you want to keep it off. Things that could break your site are usually the optimization for CSS and JavaScripts. So you definitely need to be careful whenever you turn any of these settings on. I won't go too deep into what each of these settings are because it could get technical, but just know that these settings here will speed up your website and could replace most of the common issues you find on Google PageSpeed Insights, such as eliminate render blocking resources. At the end of all configuration, you'll be left with the best WP Rocket settings for your website. So after all these settings, if we test the site again, the performance on the PageSpeed Insights test should be in tip-top shape. The final frontier of speed optimization is to use a content delivery network. Check this out. This is the world map. If your web host is located in the US, it can quickly display your website to people in the US. However, when people on the other side of the world, like Japan, India, or Singapore, tries to visit your website, it may take a little time for it to load because the data from your website needs to travel a long distance. With the help of content delivery networks, which are located all over the world, just like your web server, they will store a cached version of your website so it can be served to the audience all over the world much faster. That's the amazing thing about CDNs. If your website is hosted on a Litespeed server, then there is a dedicated CDN service called QuickCloud. The other popular alternative for other web servers is the Cloudflare CDN. Once you have connected your website to the Cloudflare CDN on WP Rocket under add-ons, you can easily integrate your website and WP Rocket to Cloudflare. Let's recap. The first thing you want to do is to create a blank page and test it to see if there are any codes that are injected to all the other pages of your website unnecessarily. If there is, you want to either remove it or find a way to optimize it. Then you want to test all your active plugins to see if any of them are slowing down your website. We recommend doing a test on a separate website or in a staging environment. Use Pingdom or any other speed testing tool to first determine the performance of a blank page when no plugins are installed, and then you want to compare its performance when plugins are active one at a time. Next, once you remove all the unnecessary plugins and codes, on a page you're optimizing, you want to shift the elements above the fold so that heavier elements such as the images, videos, maps, ads, or whatever are not considered as a largest Contentful paint. And then you want to optimize your images for the web by making sure that images nicely fit into the display screens of devices. Our recommendation is to keep the width of the full-length images within 800 pixels, and for half-length images, keep it within 300 to 400 pixels in width. Then you want to use plugins and tools to optimize and compress the size of the images and finally serve it in a WebP format. Following that, we recommend hosting your sites on a Litespeed server because it is generally much faster and you can reduce the number of installed plugins. And speaking of plugins, an SEO plugin is a necessity, so the Rank Math plugin is the most lightweight that provides the most functionalities and you can reduce the number of active plugins even further. Then, whenever you discover a page element that is slowing down your page, such as these elements, ask yourself if the page is ranking for highly competitive keywords. If yes, you should remove the element if possible. If not, try to optimize it. Installing a lightweight theme is important as well because it injects lots of codes to all the pages of your site. This is the list of lightweight themes we recommend. Then make sure to utilize a caching and speed performance plugin to optimize your entire site. It will make your website load much faster. Following that, use a CDN so that your global audience can access your site a lot quicker. That's all the tips we have for you, and I'm pretty sure some of the tips are new to you and you have not heard of them anywhere else because those are thought of by yours truly based on years of personal experience. I hope you like them. Anyway, if you find this video helpful, do remember to smash that thumbs up button. We truly appreciate that. If there are any other speed optimization tips that are worth mentioning, feel free to leave a comment down below, it will help others as well. And if you have any aha moments, do share it with us as well. This is Jack from Rank Math. I'll see you in the next video.